In the year 2145, humanity had expanded beyond Earth and settled on various planets across the galaxy. The strongest and bravest colonists formed the United Colonies of Earth, known simply as UCE. They had made friends with some alien species, but a new threat loomed. The Terathi, a once dominant warrior species, had lost their strength and became desperate. They sought to reclaim their power by unleashing their war beasts on human colonies. The Ferex, the Terathi's great war beasts, were massive creatures with elongated bodies, covered in thick scales. They had sharp claws capable of tearing through metal and a roar that echoed through the valleys of any planet they inhabited. The Terathi believed that with these beasts, they could conquer human territories and regain their dominance. Commander Lisa Hart was the leader of a small colony on a remote planet named Verita. She was known for her bravery and clever strategies. One evening, she gathered her team in the main hall of the colony. The air was thick with tension as they discussed the impending attack. "We cannot allow them to take our colony," Lisa said sternly. "We need to devise a plan to stop them before they arrive." Her team consisted of Mark, a skilled engineer, Jenna, a biologist who had studied alien species, and Tom, a former soldier with great combat experience. Together, they presented ideas and strategies. Lisa knew they had to think outside the box. "What if we could turn the Ferex against the Terathi?" Mark suggested. "We have to find a way to domesticate them." The idea seemed risky, but Jenna added, "I've read that wild creatures can be trained if done correctly. We just need to find a way to communicate with them." "We'll need to act fast," Lisa replied. "The Terathi could be here within days." They began gathering supplies to create devices that would emit sounds and signals mimicking the Ferex calls. The team worked tirelessly. Tom practiced combat drills daily, preparing for any confrontation, while Mark and Jenna worked in the lab trying to design the communication devices. Finally, the day came when the Ferex appeared on the horizon. The creatures thundered across the plains, their massive bodies moving with power and grace. The team watched from a hidden vantage point, feeling a mix of fear and determination. "Now or never," Lisa whispered. They activated their devices, sending out the signals meant to mimic the calls of the Ferex. The sounds echoed across the valley, flowing like music into the ears of the war beasts. To their surprise, the Ferex paused, their fierce eyes narrowing in curiosity. "This might actually work," Jenna gasped. The team continued the signals, using different tones and cadences to capture the Ferex attention. Slowly, the beasts began to approach, drawn in by the unfamiliar sounds. Lisa felt a surge of hope. However, the Terathi were not far behind. As the beasts came closer, the Terathi warriors appeared on the hill, armed and ready for battle. They saw their war beasts being lured away and became furious. "Stop them!" a Terathi warrior shouted, lunging towards the Ferex. "Don't let them reach the beasts!" Tom yelled. In a flash, the team took their positions. Lisa and Tom engaged the Terathi in combat, holding them off as Mark and Jenna continued their work with the devices. Lisa dodged a fierce strike from a warrior, retaliating with a swift counterattack, while Tom fought valiantly to keep the Terathi at bay. To everyone's amazement, the Ferex responded to the signals and began to growl, understanding that they were being called. They turned from their captors, their loyalty shifting. As more Ferex moved toward the team, it became clear that they were now allies. "Look!" Jenna shouted, pointing. "They're coming!" With a newfound strength, the Ferex charged toward the Terathi warriors. The ground trembled as the massive creatures entered the fray, swiping at the Terathi with their powerful limbs. The Terathi underestimated their beasts and soon found themselves overrun. "Now, let's show them our plan," Lisa yelled, rallying the team. The Ferex fought with surprising intelligence, coordinating their attacks against the bewildered Terathi. The colonists joined forces with the newly formed Ferex, and together they pushed back the enemies. Mark ran beside a Ferex, directing it towards a group of warriors, while Jenna cheered them on. One powerful ferret knocked a group of Tarathi off their feet. Lisa and Tom took advantage of the confusion and pressed forward. The tides had turned, and it was now evident that the colonists and their war beasts were winning. As the dust settled, the Tarathi began to retreat, realizing that they had underestimated the humans. They fled the battlefield, leaving behind their once feared war beasts. After the battle, Lisa stood among her team and the ferrets, feeling a wave of triumph wash over her. They had not only saved their colony, but had also forged an unexpected bond with the ferrets. "Look at them," Jenna said, smiling as one of the beasts approached her, sniffing her hand curiously. "They're not just war beasts anymore. They can be our allies." With that, Lisa knew that their victory was not only in saving their colony, but also in truly understanding the creatures they had once feared. The ferrets would become guardians of Verida, protecting it from threats both near and far. As the sun set over the horizon, Lisa stood with her team and their new companions. Together, they had turned the tide of war, transforming enemies into friends and showcasing that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in power, but in understanding those who seem different from ourselves. And from that day forward, the ferrets and the humans of Verida lived in harmony, ready to face whatever challenges the universe would throw at them next. The year is 2742. Humans, having spread across the galaxy, encountered the krill. The krill were a fascinating species, reptilian humanoids with a penchant for elaborate rituals and a deep respect for their war beasts, massive, six-legged creatures called grolak. These grolak were formidable, their armored hides impervious to most weaponry. The krill, however, were surprisingly peaceful, using the grolak primarily for ceremonial purposes. Humans, ever the expansionists, viewed the grolak as a military asset. A young human scientist named Ilara Vance was part of a team studying krill culture. Ilara, fascinated by the grolak's physiology, discovered a surprising detail. The grolak possessed a complex social structure, communicating through subtle shifts in their posture and low-frequency rumbling. This wasn't brute strength. It was sophisticated communication. This discovery fueled the human military's interest, who believed that they could use these war beasts against other alien species. General Kale, a grizzled veteran known for his aggressive tactics, spearheaded the initiative. He oversaw the capture of several grolak, transporting them to a heavily fortified base on Xylos, a newly colonized planet. His team, comprised of a diverse group including xenobiologists, weapons specialists, and trainers, worked tirelessly to adapt the grolak to human warfare. They developed specialized saddles, fitted with advanced weaponry, and attempted to condition the grolak to respond to human commands. Initially, progress was slow. The grolak, accustomed to a hierarchical society led by krill elders, reacted with confusion and aggression. Many of the human handlers were injured during training sessions, but Kale pressed on, driven by ambition and a belief in the superiority of human ingenuity. He dismissed Ilara's warnings about the grolak's complex emotional intelligence, seeing them merely as tools of war. Meanwhile, on another human colony, a young krill named Xylar, who had been studying human customs, observed their treatment of the grolak with growing alarm. Xylar, unlike most krill, had a deep understanding of human ambition and aggression. He saw the potential for disaster in their attempts to weaponize the grolak. He knew of Ilara Vance's research and decided to reach out to her, hoping to prevent a conflict. Xylar, using a sophisticated communication device, managed to contact Ilara. He revealed his concerns, explaining the krill's deep-seated respect for the grolak and the devastating consequences of their mistreatment. Ilara, already harboring doubts about the military's approach, was shocked by Xylar's warnings. Together, they devised a plan to expose the flaws in the military's strategy. They began by subtly sabotaging the training regime. Ilara manipulated data, providing inaccurate information to the weapons specialists. Zylar, using his knowledge of Grolak behavior, sent coded messages through subsonic vibrations, subtly influencing the Grolak's responses. The result was chaos. The Grolak, disoriented and confused by contradictory commands, became increasingly unpredictable. The turning point came during a full-scale demonstration for high-ranking military officials. General Kale, brimming with confidence, ordered a simulated attack. But the Grolak, responding to Zylar's subtle signals, refused to obey. Instead of charging the designated target, they turned on the human soldiers, their powerful legs sending soldiers flying. The advanced weaponry attached to their saddles malfunctioned, adding to the chaos. The demonstration turned into a bloodbath. The heavily armed human soldiers were no match for the enraged Grolak, their superior strength and armor proving too much. General Kyle himself narrowly escaped with his life, the event shattering his confidence and exposing the flaws in his strategy. The incident served as a harsh lesson to humanity. The Grolak were far more sophisticated than they had anticipated, and their attempts to domesticate them for warfare had disastrous consequences. The military's Grolak program was shut down, and a new era of cooperation with the Krill began. Ilara and Zylar's collaboration was instrumental in fostering this peaceful relationship, demonstrating that understanding another species, rather than dominating it, was the key to galactic harmony. The incident became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the dangers of arrogance and the importance of respect for other cultures and life forms. Later, a formal apology was issued to the Krill. The Grolak, after a period of rehabilitation and emotional care, were eventually returned to their homeworld. Ilara Vance and Zylar became unlikely allies, their joint efforts forming the basis for a new era of intercultural understanding within the galaxy. This interspecies collaboration became a beacon of hope, demonstrating the possibilities of peaceful coexistence in a vast and often unpredictable universe. The Grolak, once seen as potential weapons of war, became symbols of understanding and the folly of underestimating the intelligence and resilience of other life forms. The year is 2742. Humans, having spread across the galaxy, encountered the Krill. The Krill were a reptilian species, technologically advanced, but surprisingly peaceful. Their greatest strength, or so they thought, lay in their war beasts. Massive armored creatures bred for combat. These beasts, the size of small tanks, were a terrifying sight, and the Krill boasted of their power. Their first contact with humans went smoothly enough, marked by cautious exchanges of gifts and information. Humans gifted the Krill advanced farming techniques, while the Krill showed off their war beasts. Among the human delegation was Dr. Eris Thorne, a xenobiologist with a quiet curiosity. He wasn't particularly interested in the Krill's technology or their culture. Instead, he found himself captivated by the war beasts. Their physiology, their behavior, even their surprisingly docile nature when not in combat piqued his interest. He requested samples of their DNA, a request initially met with suspicion but eventually granted. His team, composed of genetically trained specialists and data analysts, began an in-depth study. Back on Earth, the initial reports of the Krill's war beasts caused a stir. Military strategists, eager to harness the creatures' might for their own gain, planned to integrate them into the human military. General Petrov, a staunch advocate of this integration, pushed for immediate acquisition and weaponization of the creatures. He envisioned armies of these beasts, overwhelming any enemy force, establishing undeniable human supremacy. Meanwhile, Dr. Thorne's team made an incredible discovery. The Krill war beasts' DNA held a startling secret. Their docile behavior, their dependence on Krill handlers, their complex social structures, all pointed to something unexpected. These creatures weren't naturally aggressive. They had been domesticated. Over millennia, the krill had selectively bred these powerful creatures, fostering loyalty and obedience. They had spent generations molding these powerful beings into subservient weapons. The original krill war beast was far more aggressive, possessing a primal drive that had been carefully bred out over time. The implications were profound. If the krill had spent so long domesticating their war beasts, could humans do the same, perhaps even better? The idea was initially met with resistance. Many argued that these creatures were too dangerous, too unpredictable. But Dr. Thorne's findings, coupled with sophisticated simulations, showed the potential benefits. A carefully crafted genetic modification could potentially enhance the war beast's docility and loyalty, creating a truly unparalleled military asset. General Petrov, initially skeptical, was gradually convinced. He saw a pathway to a stronger military, an advantage over any potential enemy. He secured funding for a large-scale project, the Krill Warbeast Domestication Program, a top-secret project intended to create the ultimate military asset. The project was led by Dr. Thorne, who, with a team of genetic engineers, began the painstaking process of modifying the war beast's DNA. They focused on suppressing aggressive tendencies while enhancing loyalty and obedience. Years passed, and the program yielded remarkable results. The modified war beasts, affectionately dubbed K9s by the scientists, proved even more docile than their krill counterparts. They were intelligent, responsive to human commands, and fiercely loyal to their handlers. Their size and strength remained, but their aggression was nearly eliminated. The military tests were astonishingly successful. K9s quickly proved invaluable in military simulations. One day, a catastrophic event happened. A malfunction in the K9's control systems resulted in a small contingent breaking free. They were not aggressive, not outwardly violent, but their size and power caused widespread chaos. Cities were damaged, infrastructure was destroyed, and civilian casualties were numerous. This incident highlighted the underlying risk of depending on such powerful creatures, even if domesticated. The incident forced a re-evaluation of the program. The Krill Warbeast Domestication Program was ultimately shut down. The remaining K9s were carefully monitored, their control systems updated, and their numbers significantly reduced. The experience provided a stark lesson. Human ambition, when paired with unprecedented power, can have catastrophic consequences. The Krill's war beasts, originally a symbol of their power, became a stark reminder of humanity's own capacity for unforeseen, catastrophic consequences, proving that the humans had arguably domesticated a far more dangerous species, themselves. The once feared Krill war beasts became a cautionary tale, highlighting the risks of uncontrolled technological advancement and the unpredictable nature of even the most loyal creatures. The galaxy, once threatened by the Krill's war beasts, was now facing a different threat, one that originated from within. In the year 2150, humans had spread across the stars. After centuries of exploration, many planets were settled, and thriving colonies grew everywhere. Yet, humanity was not alone. In the vastness of space, the Zorkans lived on the planet Gorgath. They were a fierce and proud species known for their brutal war beasts. Towering creatures with armored skin and sharp claws, these beasts were fierce protectors of their homes, and they were used to battle anyone who threatened their territory. Captain Maria Lawson was the leader of the Earth colony on the planet, New Haven. They had worked hard to create a peaceful society, but rumors of Zorkan war beasts began to spread. Local farmers reported strange noises at night and livestock went missing. Maria knew they had to be cautious. If the Zorkans had decided to attack, it could mean disaster. One night, Maria gathered her closest friends and allies to discuss the growing threat. Jake, a skilled engineer, had been tinkering with safety devices. Sarah, a botanist, was known for her knowledge about creatures on various planets. And Lee, the colony's security head, had fought in skirmishes before. "Are we sure it's the Zyx'kari?" Lee asked, sharpening his knife. "The other colonies have reported them, but no one has seen the beasts." "They unleash their war beasts on the colonies," Maria replied, firm in her voice. "If we don't prepare, we could lose everything." Jake nodded. "If we can find a way to defend ourselves, we might have a chance. I've been working on an active defense shield. It can be ready in a week, but we need help." "Where do we find allies?" Sarah asked. She looked worried, but determined. "We only have ourselves here." Just then, a commotion erupted outside. The ground shook with a deep rumble. The group rushed out and saw a massive Zyx'kari war beast standing at the edge of the colony. It was bigger than any creature they had seen, with thick, armored skin and glowing red eyes. People ran away in fear. Maria felt her heart race, but she stood her ground. "Hold your positions!" she yelled, trying to keep everyone calm. She knew they had to communicate or face a catastrophe. Lee crept closer to the beast, holding his weapon low. "This isn't good," he whispered. "If it charges, we'll be in trouble." But then something unexpected happened. Instead of charging, the beast growled low, seemingly waiting for something. A small Zyx'kari, a young one, emerged from behind the beast's legs. It looked scared, its body shaking. The sight of the young Zyx'kari surprised Maria. "Maybe it's not here to fight," Jake said, slowly inching closer. "If there's a young one along, it might be a sign." Just as Maria was about to respond, more Zyx'kari appeared. They were not the terrifying warriors she had imagined. They seemed protective of the young one, but they also showed signs of weariness, as if they had traveled long distances. "What do they want?" Lee asked, eyes wide. Maria took a deep breath and started walking slowly towards the Zyx'kari. The adults growled slightly but did not attack. "I am Captain Maria Lawson of New Haven," she said, her voice steady. "We mean you no harm." The Zyx'kari war beast lowered its head, and to everyone's surprise, the young one moved closer to Maria. It sensed her calmness and approachability. Maria knelt down, extending her hand gently. "We want to understand each other," she continued. "Tell us why you are here." One of the Zyx'kari stepped forward, its eyes melting from fierce red to a soft orange hue. It spoke in deep growls that were somehow relatable, even though the words were unfamiliar. They were trying to communicate. Hours passed as the two groups interacted. Slowly, Maria realized that the Zyx'kari were not there to wage war. They had lost their territory to invaders and sought refuge. They had traveled to the Earth colony looking for safety and food for their young. As night fell, the Zyx'kari led Maria and her friends away from the colony to a hidden cave near the base of a mountain. Inside, they showed them their young, along with a few supplies they had managed to gather. Sarah's heart softened as she saw the care and love the Zyx'kari had for their young. "Perhaps we can help each other," Maria suggested, thinking hard. "We have food and shelter. We can provide for you, and you can protect us against the real threat that is coming to this area." Lee looked skeptical. "Can we trust them?" "We have to try," Maria insisted, looking into the wise eyes of the Zyx'kari leader. "If we work together, we can defend both our homes." Over the next few weeks, they collaborated. Jake completed the defenses for the colony, while the Zyx'kari trained the humans in combat skills, teaching them how they used their instincts to fight. In return, the Zyx'kari received food, safe living conditions, and companionship that their kind had rarely known. One fateful day, the invaders arrived. They were armed and ready to take the Earth and Zyx'kari lands. As Maria and the Zyx'kari stood together to defend their home, determination filled the air. The combined forces were stronger than anyone expected. As battle ensued, humans fought alongside Zyx'kari. Each side learned from each other, using their strengths to cover weaknesses. The Zorkan war beasts charged fiercely, their roars resonating through the valley. Maria led her team with bravery, and Lee fought side by side with Zorkans, proving they were no longer enemies. In the end, the invaders were pushed back. The colony and the Zorkans prevailed. Exhausted but triumphant, they stood together, realizing they had created an unexpected bond. What began as fear evolved into friendship, and alliances were formed that neither side had anticipated. The new alliance brought peace to both species, changing the way they viewed one another. Maria looked at the Zorkan leader, fully aware that the real monsters were not the creatures they had once feared, but the misunderstandings that had driven them apart. From that day on, New Haven became a symbol of unity among the stars. They were now caretakers, warriors, and friends. Together, they thrived, stronger than ever before, shaping a new chapter in the history of both their worlds. In the year 2145, humans had spread across the stars. They found new planets and built colonies. One day, on a distant planet called Zephyra, the colonists discovered strange creatures. These creatures were large, powerful beasts, covered in tough, scaly skin and standing on 4 muscular legs. The colonists saw potential in these creatures. They thought they could use them for protection and farming. They named these creatures war beasts. Sarah was a young scientist who led the project to domesticate the war beasts. She was curious and brave, willing to take risks for knowledge. Her team included James, a strong and loyal guard, and Maria, an expert in animal behavior. They built a habitat for the war beasts, hoping to bond with them and train them to help humans. At first, things went well. The war beasts were smart and learned quickly. Sarah was thrilled as she observed them responding to commands. Thousands of colonists visited their habitat to see the amazing creatures. Everyone was excited about the war beasts. They believed they would make life on Zephyra safe and prosperous. But as time passed, things changed. The animals grew restless. They had been taken from their wild homes and placed in enclosures. Sarah noticed aggressive behavior in some of the creatures. They were strong and wild, and their instincts kicked in. One day, during a training session, a war beast named Titan reared up suddenly. Titan was the largest of them all, and in one swift motion he broke free from his handlers. Chaos erupted as Titan charged into the crowd. People screamed and ran. James, quick to react, stepped in front of the beast, trying to calm him down. But Titan was not listening. The creature stomped and roared, causing fear everywhere. It took all of James' strength and courage to face the beast. Meanwhile, Maria noticed that the other war beasts had also become restless. They were not just wild animals, they were dangerous. She called out to Sarah, "We need to put them back, in their enclosures before it gets worse." But Sarah hesitated. She wanted to study them, to figure out what went wrong. Just then, Titan charged again, but James held his ground, making himself big and trying to show he meant no harm. He knew he was taking a risk, but he believed he could reach the creature. "Easy, Titan. Look at me," he shouted. "You're strong, but you don't need to be angry." Suddenly, Sarah had an idea. "We need to communicate with them." She rushed to grab a tranquilizer gun to stop the chaos, but James stopped her. "No, that could make it worse. We have to connect with them." With all his strength and calming words, James slowly reached out his hand, showing Titan that he was not a threat. The crowd watched anxiously as the great beast slowed down. Titan sniffed James's hand, and the tension in the air lessened. Everyone held their breath, hoping for a miracle. Finally, after what felt like hours, Titan lowered his massive head, accepting James's bravery. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Sarah knew they had to regroup quickly. She gathered her team and called for the remaining war beasts to be guided back to their enclosures. Everyone had learned an important lesson about trust, bravery, and respect for nature. After the incident, Sarah and her team worked diligently to improve the conditions of the war beasts. They created a larger habitat, allowing the creatures to exhibit their natural behaviors. They also introduced more space for exercise and play, thinking this might help reduce their aggression. Gradually, the beasts began to calm down, and their bond with the humans deepened. However, the troubles were not over. A rival colony bordering theirs believed the war beasts were a threat. They were afraid that these powerful creatures would be used in war against them. One night, when the stars shone brightly, a group of armed men from the rival colony attacked their habitat, trying to capture the beasts. As the alarms blared, Sarah, James, and Maria quickly organized a defense. They could not let the war beasts fall into the wrong hands. James, armed with an energy shield, led the charge. He and Maria fought bravely against the intruders, while Sarah focused on securing the cages of the war beasts. The fight was fierce. The intruders were strong, but the colonists fought for their home and for the creatures they had grown to love. Titan sensed the danger and roared, rallying the other war beasts. With a surprising unity, they joined the fight, charging at the intruders and scattering them. The true power of the domesticated war beasts shone through as they defended their home. With their help, the colonists successfully drove back the attackers. The bond between humans and war beasts proved stronger than anyone imagined. In the aftermath, when peace returned to the colony, Sarah realized that they had achieved more than just domestication. They had created a partnership. The war beasts were not tools or machines. They were allies. Together, they would protect their colony and thrive in this new world. Sarah, James, and Maria stood among the war beasts, their hearts full of hope. They had faced fear and danger but emerged stronger. Together they learned that with courage, respect, and understanding, humans and beasts could coexist and even become protectors of the stars. As Zephyra basked in the soft glow of its twin moons, the colonists celebrated. They had faced the unknown and prevailed. The war beasts were not merely creatures of war. They had become companions on their journey among the stars, and for Sarah and her team, the adventure had only just begun.